Okay, the closing of Hardin Hills, there's a few reasons that they're stating. Reduced census, okay? Um, if you look at the census, right, they had beds available, right? And from what I have learned a ton over these last couple months is that different people are worth different money, right? You've got private pay people who, of course, is just cash in. You've got Medicaid, Medicare people. You've got when you move somebody to, hospital care and you move them back to your facility, whether you bill it, one way or another way, can determine that you get better pricing. You can get a higher payout if you bring them back under one heading instead of bringing them back under another heading. And you can really kind of screw up your billing if you're not tracking that and doing that correctly. But different people have different assets for a nursing home, right? And so if you want to take the time and the beds that you have, you want to take the patients that pay out the most, okay, right? I mean, if you're looking at it purely from a business sense and not dealing with any of the humanitarian parts of doing your job and doing it well, right? You're looking at just the flat line of saying, this is money in, money out type of thing. So from what I understand is that C wing, so we have 85 beds. We have beds down in the F wing that aren't even being used, which ideally could be used. I mean, there are beds. We could set them up and have them as beds. But we don't even do that. We go ahead and close the C wing, right? So we're going to close a whole new wing. Let me see if I can find when we closed C wing. It was supposed to be temporary, but I'm not sure they talked about it. November of 23 is when they temporary closed C wing, and they were moving residents by the 13th up to the other hall. And so that was, I'm not sure. Why did they close C wing? That's just, how many beds is, 20 beds, maybe 10 down each side that, are, in there to have residents that aren't being, done. Maybe they could have taken, you wanted to be full all the time. I don't think, you want to question, like, this is one of the reasons why you cancel, you close the facility is reduced census, but I'd like to know, why was the census reduced? There's needs all the time. Rehab patients, long care patients, Alzheimer's patients was a huge thing, and they took such good care of them. And so we were the only Alzheimer unit in Hardin County. So when our facility closed, you can't get, Logan Acres, they have 15 beds. Well, actually, they have two rows. They have our 15 beds of Alzheimer's units and then a whole nother wing of their own. And so you're going to Bell Fountain, is a close place for that. And so, could we have had another Alzheimer unit? Probably, because there's definitely, I mean, Logan Acres saw that there was a need for more Alzheimer's patients. Surely we could have done that. So, and when we already own the beds. So I would like to have more information on why is the census slow now that I know that, that it was an issue. I didn't know it was an issue before. So definitely some questions about lowered census, especially when you're closing a wing and selling beds. If you talk about a business that it takes a set number to care for this business, and you're taking huge chunks of profit out of that, of course you're going to struggle financially because you're taking all your revenue away. It just doesn't make any sense. So lowered Medicaid payouts, right? So that's another one. There's a whole Medicaid, is it Medicare debacle, which is another thing that you're scratching your head on and saying, evidently there was a glitch in the system. I think I saw a couple bills, $12,000, and there's another one maybe a little more, of where we've paid money back to Medicaid, Medicare for this glitch. But when you look at the meeting notes and you look at Sharon's reports of the commissioners, it starts out as 250,000 and 370,000, and now it's all the way up to 425,000 that is an overpayment. So Medicare just paid a huge lump sum. And Sharon, in one of her emails, I think she said she estimated the best that she could. So she doesn't even sure, based on her billing, how much the overpayment was from this Medicare situation. So it's really, but you're looking at, and she asked for an I don't know if it was appropriated, but she asked that they set aside $450,000 for the next 2 years to pay back Medicare when they ask for it. So Medicare, they're supposed to be figuring out this glitch, that's, and it's been going on since 23, right? They said, oh, we have a glitch. They don't know how much they overpaid you. Sharon doesn't know how much they overpaid. And so they're waiting around trying to find out if they're going to come back and demand repayment. And then she said on the tour, if you watch the Hardin Hills tour, they were in the office there, and she mentioned that she even heard that maybe they would forgive it, right? That they weren't going to ask for that money back. And so she wasn't quite sure. So I can't imagine that Medicare is just going to turn their back on $450,000 that we owe them for this overpayment. And why does nobody know how much it is? Those are questions I'd like to know. So, is it lower payment? Because it sounds like we got a $450,000 increase in payment. So again, questions on, these are the reasons why you're closing: reduced census and the lowered payments. And we know that depending on which patients you admit, you get higher payments. So why are we not picking those higher payments, right? If we have lower payouts, right? We should be strategic and be taking the ones that are going to help, with the lowered census, you're going to help get more profits in. Okay, here's another one: rising costs, right? Who hasn't had rising costs in these last several years? All of us. It's insane, the cost of any products, the supplies, the paper supplies that they need there, the food supplies that they need there, right? Everybody's salaries everybody's hurting, insurance costs are going through the roof, right? And so, yeah, rising costs. But I have some questions, right? I have some questions because, I looked at the banks, and with this whole VanCrest thing now, is it from VanCrest? Did they decide to do it on their own? Not sure, but there was a LeaderStat training, which I've heard mixed reviews about its helpfulness, but in 2023, we spent $60,000 on LeaderStat training. Huge amounts of money on LeaderStat training, which is MDS training. I think it's basically training, to make sure that everybody's following their, good practices and those kinds of things. $60,000 is a lot. It's a lot, right? And we're spending lots and lots of money, which I don't run a nursing facility, but we got people in the county, doing books and finances. We got people at Hardin Hills doing books and finances, and then we're spending, $40,000 and up on, CPAs to do our taxes, and, people, a PB&J system, and, all these systems, which I'm saying it takes a lot of money to run these systems, right? Because you're buying this one and doing this one and doing all these things, and it just makes you wonder, when you're kind of, off, taking your jobs, like if you were an accountant and you paid somebody else to do your accounting, you kind of wonder what your job is because you're paying somebody else to do it. So it just makes you wonder from an outsider to say, why are we paying salaries, decent salaries, to these people that then are handing that money over to other people to do those jobs? So I'm just kind of curious. And then I'd be really curious to look at Logan Acres and the management firm that they have running their facility. Maybe they have a better deal. Maybe they can do all theirs in-house and they don't have to buy all these like a la carte type situations. Now I know some of them, you got to have them, right? It's a complicated system. You have to have them. I'm just saying maybe we could have looked at a little better and got a little bit of better situation, overall. It's something to look at. I mean, if you're looking at closing your building, you should be looking at all your bottom lines, right? And saying, we want to keep this facility open. What's it going to take? And maybe it is, consolidating it into a management firm, because in the long run, you may get something better for a better price, right? So, so there's a lot of costs involved in those. The other thing that I think is really crazy, is that there are 80 employees out there, county employees, because everybody who worked out there is county, right? So you've got retirement benefits for those people. You got health care benefits for those people, salaries for those people. And they're good. And so, but I know that the county health care is through the roof. I mean, it is a huge burden on the finances of our counties, having these health care insurance type things, which, that's the benefit of being in government, is that, you usually get a pretty good deal. But, I just wonder, what does taking 80 people off of your insurance do to your current insurance, right? Like if your insurance is going up and up and you take 80 people off of it, is it going to maintain? I don't know, right? Definitely, has to make an impact somewhere. So that would be an interesting thing to look into. And the thing is, like, when you have your retirement and your sick days, I was talking about the engineer's office and how they can get their sick days and vacations paid out because they have a different policy than the rest of the county. Well, the rest of the county, they don't get it. So if you don't go from employed county to retirement, you don't get any of those accumulated vacation sick days. Maybe does a vacation pay out? I don't know, but you definitely don't get your sick days. So there are people out there who had thousands of sick days and that didn't get them. That just money just disappears. You're just not paid out to anybody because they didn't retire. They were not of retirement age, So you may have worked, 20 years, 27 years, and, was a faithful worker, had lots of vacation, sick time. You didn't get any of it. You didn't get any of it paid out. Now, could they have changed the rules? Probably. The engineers did. But, kind of a tragedy. So little savings there from the backs of the workers out there for our county. So the other thing is that if you look at the salaries, okay, so it's a tricky time, right? Sharon Houston comes in late part of 2018. She's here for 19, 20 hits. We get COVID, right? So we had the CARES money first, and now we have this ARPA money, the American Relief Fund, whatever. And it's somewhere in there. These nurses and these nursing home workers got incentive pay, right? They got an increase because they were working through COVID. Now, I thought, being an outsider, that was during COVID, right? During lockdown. You're getting an incentive, like you got a couple extra dollars because you're working weekends and night shifts, and you're all these hours, and it's dangerous time, and you have to do all this stuff, right? And then after lockdowns are over and everybody goes back to normal, I thought those incentive pays would go away, right? Because you're back to normal. We've been back to normal for a long time, but evidently that didn't happen. That it wasn't the case. And coming up, maybe it was July timing, I don't know, that was all going to come due. Okay, so if you look at the salaries of these workers, and good for these workers, they're getting paid well, right? But they're getting a dollar raise every year, right? Dollar, every year you look at their books and they're getting money. And so their pay rates are going up and up. And I learned that extra money that was paying for that, which I don't know if it's ARPA money, I haven't seen those pay raises were paid for somehow, and that was going to come to an end, and we weren't going to have that extra money anymore, right? And so if you wanted to keep people at that pay raise that they are now, because they've been living with this new standard of living, that it was going to have to come out of the general fund to pay that, which I was really surprised, because I figured it was all over. And so to say that we could continue to pay people at that increased rate with the reduced census, with the reduced Medicaid payouts and rising costs, right? That we couldn't meet that. And so that's an interesting conundrum to be under. And because like I said, I think it was all understood that you got an increase and that it would come back down once that incentive was gone. So again, I've got so many questions and very little places to ask for some answers. But anyway, so these people, these nurses and things, they do an excellent job. I have not heard bad things at all or through this whole time about the nurses and the care that was held out there. It was some of the best, right? And they deserve the pay that they got. But even if you deserve the pay that you get, if you can't sustain payment, of your employees, then it's going to sink the boat. It's going to sink your business. And so you got to say, okay, why are we paying people this? Especially when you find out that if people who are working at Hardin Hills then go to any other facility, they're going to have to pay major pay cuts, $7 pay cuts, because the rate that we were paying at Hardin Hills was so far above and beyond what a normal pay rate would be, is that it was a little bit astronomical, right? And so you get, really fat and sassy paychecks, right? You're going to sink your boat because you don't have enough income coming to sustain the weight of those salaries. And of course, if your salaries go up, right, all your retirement goes up, all those things have the trickle down effect. And the interesting thing, above it, there are some people out there who are making $45 an hour. Oh, so now that they announced the closing, and they don't want to lose people, and it was only kind of certain people that got these major incentives, but they didn't want to lose certain key people during the closing. And so some of these people got, $3, $2, $5 raises, right here at the end. So you're already paying high salaries, and now we're going to bump them up even more to make it even heavier of a burden. So you're kind of offloading people, and you're kind of moving that cash back over to other people. And so you're not making as much progress, in lightening the load when you're kind of paying doubling down on some of these incentives, which I'm not saying the incentives aren't necessary. I'm just saying that maybe they weren't needed. Maybe the people would have stayed for the pays that they were doing, right? And then let's talk about Sharon Houston's income, because I was surprised, okay, when I started looking into kind of the salaries and things, that she started off, I believe, around an $87,000 back in 2018-19, and she has essentially gotten a $10,000 raise every year, right? So she's gone from an 87 up $50,000. Well, that wouldn't be, maybe not quite that much, because I think she's now at $24,000 is what she asked for this year. So even in December, right? So we're going through 23, we're having all these troubles, and then they know in October of 23 that they're gonna close a facility in December, right? Sharon sent in an email saying, hey, I'm an RN, and the going rate for administrators, is $124,000. That's an 8.7% increase. I think that's pretty fine. And, I don't know, that's her email of saying that, she thinks that's reasonable, that they can decide between a 8.4 and 8.7, whatever. It's an 8% increase, right? Which comes out to about $10,000. And I'll have to go back and look and see if she, I'm assuming that they approved that. I don't, didn't look at it recently, but back in, when I was kind of going over that, and so you look at, from a county perspective, the prosecutor makes $131,000, and over here then is an administrator making, $124,000, and supposedly works from home 2 days a week. This is from what I've heard, and so just surprising. So of all the things that you're surprised at, so when you talk about rising costs, how did we go from 87,000 to 124,000, and how does that affect, the sustainability of this, this company, this, entity, in our county, and, and so, that's a real concern, I think, to say that we've let, that ratchet up so high, especially when, I don't know many, how many people in Hardin County make that same amount of money, right? And so that's just a hard pill to swallow, especially when we have now lost our nursing home, right? So anyway, so rising costs, like I have questions on where those rising costs, what were the costs, and why didn't we bring it, instead of LeaderStat coming in, why didn't we bring in a company to look at our books and to say, hey, here's how we can slim things down, set correction, and keep it afloat, right? So, so definitely, if the desire was to keep the nursing home, I can think of so many things that could have been done, but I don't own it, right? And so the commissioners do, and I will say they have full right to do with it what they want. So be careful who you vote in as commissioner. Okay, the last thing on the list is the fire pump of what the linchpin is. Okay, so the fire pump now comes into play. And I will tell you at the start of this, we are not the only nursing home. And actually there are quite a few nursing homes, even one in Marion, that has been closed with very similar reasons. Okay, so this is a little bit of a, I forget, like you can Google it, different nursing homes closing, and you will find a very similar set of issues, that are being presented, and very similar, and there are citizens who fought back and tried to save their nursing home. They were unsuccessful, I believe. But whereas this kind of a similar pattern seen through different county nursing homes. So we're not the only one. This is not unique to us. This is kind of, if you want to close your nursing home, here's how you can do it. Like maybe there's a form out there that actually tells you, like, this is how you do it. Everybody knows the fire pumps are going to go out, right? Like they have a finite lifespan, and if you don't maintain them and you don't repair them and you don't do it in a timely manner, because here's the thing, you can't get parts, right? So if you can't get parts, then you have to get a new whole system, right? So let's talk about the fire pump, because that's the one, the one thing that you're like, the fire pump, that's why this whole thing closed, right? But I don't think that's why this place closed. Not for real. Like that's what they're telling you is why it closed. But so this fire pump goes back years, right? We've known for years that it's been bad, and we know for years that it, if you just continue to not fix it, that it's gonna eventually fail. And here's the thing about the fire pump, is that it's one of those things that if it fails, you're putting your people in imminent jeopardy, right? Imminent jeopardy is, they come in and they say, you have to fix this or else, right? You can't be like, oh, I'll fix it later. It's like, no, you got to fix it now. And with a fire pump, if your fire pump goes out and you don't fix it, right, then you have to do fire watch, okay, which is a big deal. Although it is a big deal. But there are places that have fire watch for years, and it's okay. It's legal. It's legal as long as you have people doing fire watch. You can keep your facility open. So it's kind of a two thing, where you can say that, oh, the fire pump's done, we're going to vacate the premises, we can't do this. Or you say, we're going to do fire watch until we can find a solution. Okay, so let's look at December 15th of 22, we have MG Fire Design. Okay, so they run water out to, I forget the timing of when they annexed Hardin Hills, but they got that into the city, sewer and water, right? And so you kind of just think the fire pump is on city water, right? Because that's just what you assume, right? But they had a cistern out there, and they decided, so they found out that the city water didn't have enough pressure to run the fire pump. And evidently the line that they put out there is not really even big enough to begin with, which is kind of sad, why they ran a smaller line out there. I mean, you're running it out there, just put in the right line size. So anyways, so this whole thing of like, well, why is the city water enough? Well, it's not even hooked up to the fire pump, right? The city water, it goes out there and it feeds the facility, but it has nothing to do with the fire pumps, not even hooked up. The fire pump's still on the cistern. The cistern is full. It's in good shape. No big deal, right? But we did know about it in 22. And so the pump gets inspections. So we have ODH inspections, we have health department inspections, the fire marshal comes out and does inspections. They look at the sprinkler systems, they look at all these things. I don't know that Armor Fire is the one who does the quarterly inspections of the actual fire pump. Not everybody inspects the fire pump, but Armor Fire does. And, they come every quarter. Well, they came so it had been in 23 that, and they said the fire pump had problems. Okay, so September of 23, Corson Fire and Security comes. They replace the dielectric pre-backflow device, right? So we did a little maintenance on the fire pump, but we know it's bad, right? We know it's not doing well. The pump's doesn't have enough power. The ability of it to turn on and off is not really great. I mean, it's old, the base is all rusted out. I mean, if you look at the tour, I did take pictures of, or like take video of the fire pump so you can kind of see what it looks like. In March of 11 of 24, okay, so it would have been the first quarter, or been the second quarter of 23. Armor comes in and does their investigation. They say, this pump isn't doing great, right? You need to replace it. You need to find a solution because it's not doing great. I think that was Armor. There are names everywhere of, all these people who have these hands in this fire pump. Like, why can't we just stick to one person? But we got all kinds of people working on this thing. So anyways, we go out to bid. The commissioners go out to bid and we say, okay, we're going to replace this fire pump. And so they put it in the paper, right? They put it in the paper. It's up at the commissioner's office. You can ask for the records. They got the bids in. They opened the bids. They reviewed them. They went all the way to, all you had to do was sign the papers, right? Sign the bid, accept the bid. But that was in July of 23, right? Right before they sealed the Straughter case, right? So you kind of have the fire pump, it's no good, you need to replace it. They're like, okay, we're going to replace it. They go through all the process of replacing it, but then they have the Straughter case, and they're going to have to, they end up settling on it. So do they really want to fix the fire pump? Maybe not, right? But they are there. Bids are in. All they have to do is agree to it, okay? And they got the $225,000 from the sale of the beds. You could have paid for that, or did that go to pay the money for the Straughter case lawyers? Maybe they sold the beds because they had to pay a bill that, was overdue. Who knows? I don't know, but they're there. They could have signed it. We could have had a new pump put in. Armor Fire said, so it's going to take 9 months, I guess, to put this pump in. And so you get a year, you come back to the first quarter of 24, the pump's not fixed. You're there checking it. So they're checking it every quarter, and they're checking it 1 year later, and they say, hey, we thought it was going to take 9 months to change this pump, and it's still not fixed. And it doesn't look like you have any, are you going to fix, are you going to fix it? Maybe they told them they were going to fix it, and then here it is a whole year later and it's not fixed. Then, they say this is no good, right? Like, you've gone a whole year. There's a grace period to fix it. You didn't fix it. And so essentially Armor Fire says, look, we come out, the main pump's not working, the jockey pump's not working, you need new sensing lines. Back in 22, we knew that this was a problem. We tried to get, there's a Mercoid valve that's bad, or switch. They can't get it. The parts are old, right? You're going to have to put in a whole new system, kind of what you have, just a new system that's up to date. And they said you shouldn't use it. Now, there was no, talking to Armor, that is their red tag, right? But there is no red tag, which there's some question about actually having a red tag. I haven't received any paperwork that says officially, do not use this. The paper from Armor says, hey, you need to get the, the main pump and the jockey pump and the sensing lines. You need to do these things. That's our recommendation. But they didn't ever say, do not use this. Like, this pump is not working, right? That's how the commissioners decided to take it, right? They say, okay, you're not going to use this. But if it was me, I would like to have like hard paperwork. And then once that pump is red tagged, you've got certain things that you have to do. You got to call the fire marshal. You got to, announce it to your local fire department. You got to do all these kind of things to say, hey, our fire pump's not working. I don't know how much they do. I do know Bruce Donnelly was involved in some of this, because I've seen his name on there. But anyways, I would just like to have a piece of paper officially to say, this is the reason why we're closing the facility. There it is, right? Oh, and here's the other thing. During this whole time, the state fire marshal comes in, there's 0 citations. Like, everywhere we go, there's 0 citations for the systems until, you know, you're actually looking at that fire pump. So, you know, they called Peerless Pumps, right? They pretty much said, so when Armor did their inspection, they called down to Peerless Pumps. Peerless Pumps said, hey, we had the same problems back in 22, you know, still not fixed, actually a little worse than it was, and we can't get the parts. We tried to get the parts, we can't get the parts. Okay, so they're trying to do what they can do to get this thing rolling. They think it's the bad Mercoid switch, right? And so it's not good. Not, you know, it's not working. And if it's not working, then you should do something, right? So basically you get red tagged. March 20th, evidently the pump got red tagged. You immediately have to go into fire watch, right? So they have on there that, yes, they went into fire watch, you know, which is 24/7, walking around the building, checking doors, looking at, you know, potential fireplaces, and you kind of doing these things. And they contacted Benson Fire Safety, like real fire watch people, you know, like companies that do fire watch, and it was going to be $105 an hour, and, you know, it was going to cost $10,000. Now, if you followed any of the other meetings, Crow says, you know, it's $10,000 a week to do the fire watch. And that's true. Like, based on getting a real, actual certified people in there to do the fire watch, it's going to be that much. Turns out, go figure, you don't have to do that. You can hire pretty much anybody who's already a county employee to come out and walk the aisles of Hardin Hills and just make sure there's no fire. Okay, so we only paid people whatever their salaries were. So like if you were a nurse, and this happened a lot, like if they wanted to take you off your nursing job or whatever, your housekeeping job, then they just give you extra hours or remove your hours to give you fire watch hours, and you walk the halls looking for fire all night long. So you kind of just absorb the cost, because you would have paid that person maybe to be on staff for those hours anyways. And especially when you start getting rid of nurses, you know, when you don't need as many staff, you know, you can save a person's job by giving them the fire watch to walk around. So not $10,000 a week, not even probably felt that bad. So could you have done that for a longer period of time? Absolutely. I think so. You know, definitely when you come up to a timeline of saying you can't sell these bed licenses, you can't say these bed licenses if you close here, easy. Extend your fire watch, and you can wait your 5 to 9 months to get your beds, no problem. And then we'll get the nursing home, right? So it wasn't a big a deal as what it seemed, right? And so, anyway, so that was fire watch. Fire watch is no big deal. They took care of it. So that was kind of after when they announced the closing on April 11th, April 15th. So this was before they announced the closing and before they met with the family members. We have emails from Mark White, who is the president of Van Crest, sending over a message. You know, so Van Crest have been involved in this whole thing, and they say, before you talk to the family members, please let our people come in and look at this fire pump. We want to fix the fire pump. We want to keep this thing working, right? They're like, Vulcan can get in there. That's their people who do the fire pumps, or their fire, their sprinkler system works, right? And so they're like, please let us get our people in there. We will look at it and evaluate the fire pump, and we'll see if we can't keep this thing, even just to save these beds, right? So they're doing that on April 15th, sending an email. Sharon says, okay, let me talk to the commissioners. And then that's all we got. We got no further emails in response to that. So what the commissioners say, no, I'm assuming, because I know the commissioners a little bit better now, that they're like, no, we've already made the decision. We've made the resolution. We're not going to change our minds, and we're just moving forward. Regardless of if Vancrest wants to pay for the whole thing themselves, they're not going to do it. So, a tragedy of people wanting to come in. There were definitely, so reduced census. I think it was definitely something that could be worked on. Lower Medicaid payments. I would question, you would have to do some major education on Medicaid, Medicare to sort that out. But still, somebody could do it. The rising costs, absolutely. Everybody's had to tighten their belts these past couple years and really dig in, and that's an important part of it. And then the fire pump, man, so many options, so many. We've known about it for so long. We had that money come in. We could have easily put this in the budget, right? And just said, we're going to budget this for 5 years. We're going to budget to put money back to do the fire pump, and the money would have been there. Or we could have even asked just to allocate the money, right? When I asked if the commissioners had ever asked to allocate money for the fire pump, it was a no, right? They've never asked to allocate that money to fix it. So they didn't try. They didn't try to fix it, try to get any money for it. Fire pumps out, keep your fire watch, right? No big deal. So, definitely a lot of questions on, the validity of the closing ideas. But again, in the end, does it really make a difference if they wanted to close it? The idea is that if the commissioners just said, you know what, we don't like our nursing home, we don't want to deal with it anymore, and we think that it's the best decision to close it, and the three of them agree to close it, they could close it for no reason, right? They could just say, yeah, we didn't want it, and then they could close it. I mean, that's how much power a commissioner has, that you give in good faith to say, what could happen, right? You hire people, you put them in position. They're only there for 8 years. What damage could be done? You don't know. And evidently, it's a lot more than I would have ever considered previous to digging in here and finding out what the heck's been going on in the commissioner's office. And, makes you double think about who you're putting in office, and stepping up, getting good people to step up and run for office is another big thing. So I'm sure there's more videos to come. I'm done for tonight, and we'll start up at another point in the story.